Vice President of EPI, and I'll be moderating today's very interesting and important panel. How Apple treats its workers around the world is an issue every American and every consumer of its products ought to care about. Apple is the world leader in consumer electronics technology and marketing. It could also be the world leader in how it treats its workforce in the developing world. Many people believe that if Apple lifted its labor standards, the rest of the IT industry would follow. Instead, as you'll hear from two Chinese experts whose organizations have been closely monitoring Apple for many years, Apple has been a run-of-the-mill exploiter, part of a long tradition of Western corporations willing to wring every last penny out of people at the bottom of the international economic ladder. This has worked well for Apple, whose profits are so huge that the company reportedly doesn't know what to do with all of them. It's working particularly well for Apple's CEO, Tim Cook, whose pay last year was a mind-blowing $378 million. It's not working so well for the workers who make its products. The most important thing I hope you'll learn today is this: how Apple's supply chain workers are treated is Apple's choice. Chinese workers are not naturally predestined to be exploited, and FoxConn's labor practices are not a function of Chinese law, though China's suppression of independent labor unions does play a role. It's not even, as Apple wants you to believe, that FoxConn is a rogue operation that fails to live up to Apple's code of conduct. Apple's own code of conduct allows more than twice as much overtime work as is permitted under Chinese law. Apple has the power and profits to raise pay dramatically and improve conditions significantly. It's Apple's choice whether to share those profits with its workforce. It's also Apple's choice how it allocates pay between its production workers and Apple's management. FoxConn has been manufacturing in Brazil for several years and conforms to Brazilian laws and labor norms. The big question is whether Apple is willing to do the same. They've dipped their toes in the water with iPhone production in Jundiaí and are reportedly trying to decide whether to dive in and produce iPads, knowing that the Brazilian labor movement won't accept the treatment Apple's workers have received in China. It's a real test for Apple's commitment to fair labor standards. Now, I will introduce each speaker before he or she begins, and then after everyone has presented, we'll open the floor to questions. And because you all, most of you, and I haven't learned to speak Chinese or Portuguese, we'll have interpreters along the way, so this will be a somewhat slower process than it normally is. I'm going to begin with Debbie Chan, the project officer overseeing investigations of FoxConn for the Hong Kong-based students and scholars against corporate misbehavior. SOCCON was founded by students in 2005, and its tiny staff has won several international awards for its monitoring work. Debbie will describe SOCCON briefly, but let me just say that every finding in the FoxConn investigation report recently released by Apple's hand-picked auditor, the Fair Labor Association, was previously documented and extensively documented over the course of the last 6 years by SOCCON. Debbie?